bit. So, yeah, without further ado, the plan for today, we're just gonna talk about, everyone's stories a bit, keep it as open-ended as possible. I think that just having the right ingredients, the right minds together, we're just gonna let it be a conversation. I've got a couple questions and we'll just kind of go through it. But before we start with that, if y'all would like to just introduce yourself, we'll go right down the line. So Maximus, if you'd like to start.
Check 1, 2. Hey, what's up? My name is Miguel Rosario, also known as Maximus, representing True Crew, Tri-Rock, and Top Rock United.
Peace, y'all. My name is Kwikstep. Fresh Kids, Lords of Finesse, Full Circle Soldiers, and my journey started with breaking in 1981, and when I first witnessed it, it was about 1978.
Peace, y'all. My name is Brian Pistols, By Chop Breakers, Del Fuego Wolfpack. Started breaking in the early 2000s, and I'm just honored to be sitting here on a panel with two other brothers that I really looked up to that kind of helped me in my own growth and journey. So just dope to be here.
Word. I think it's gonna be really fresh discussion today. We got these brothers from all different generations too, so I'm really excited for this. Y'all ready for this panel? Woo, let's go. All right, cool. Okay, we're gonna get right into it. So, all of these questions are gonna be open to whoever wants to answer and whatever order. But the first question, how did you start breaking? How did you get introduced to hip hop? I don't know if you have any experiences that stand out to you from that time when you first kind of saw what this was, and why did you start breaking, and why did you continue breaking?
Well, I was born in '82, so I was born at a time where everything was just exploding. So my first exposure to hip hop here in Worcester, Mass, was at a really young age. By the time I started remembering, b-boying pretty much already was done and dealt with supposedly. And so at that time, you had the freestyle and the party dancing and all that going down. So that was my first exposure to hip hop, just people bumping it in cars, from that to people just enjoying themselves in corners with their boom boxes. Fashion was still a big thing, obviously. And it was until like the mid-90s that I was exposed to it for the first time. I was a really big martial arts fan, since I was a kid. I was really into a lot of like fight choreo, from Shaw Brothers to anything that was coming out of Golden Harvest and stuff like that. So that really inspired me to break it. Like that already inspired me to begin with when it came to just, movement. And I then saw Only the Strong in '93, and that was my first exposure to capoeira, where it was a dance and a form of self-defense all at once. So it helped me then understand what I was being exposed to, because at first I was kind of a hater when my brother and his crew were starting around '93, '94. This was the revival era. So when I was coming up, they were getting into it. They didn't know much about the whole hip hop thing. They weren't really knowledgeable about all that, but they were dancing to what, heads to the pop track, should we say, heads were dancing to in the earlier '80s, which is like the electro funk movement, anything coming out of like, John Roby, Arthur Baker type of style. They were more into those things through the street jam compilations in the '90s. And that was my first exposure to it. I then started practicing, messing around '95, and it just became legit from then. I got hooked. We were pretty much coming from that first crew. Remember, this is the revival era, so a lot of heads were coming up again. They inspired a lot of people in the city. they formed their crews, they were rivals, and the story goes. I don't know if there was anything on top of that question, but wait.
The follow-up is, so why did you continue to break? Like, yeah.
Well, I kept breaking, honestly, because one, it just made me feel good. It was just a form of meditation. It made me feel good. It made me understand. I thought it was just such a cool way to express yourself, especially when you got any animosity towards another dancer. You know, it goes back to the martial arts stuff, and I just found that so amazing, and how that's how so many people, you know, got together through the battlefield of hip hop, that it just made me want to keep doing it. I don't know, like really. The music, obviously, played a big role, and the fact that all the elements didn't stop. You know, there was always OGs in every element of the culture that was still going. So, me coming up, when I first saw Seven Gems in the mid-90s, I made then the comparison quick after seeing B Street, and I was like, oh shoot, these are the same dudes that were on B Street, but they're in their late 20s now, like pushing 30. What happened in between all that? And I think when I just got older, I mean, I even still ask Brother Quick here a question till this day, what went down around that time period? And I think it's sort of like wanting to know like ancient history, or your history and where your bloodline and where you come from. I think that whole hunger for that knowledge is what kept me going, truthfully.
Word.
Do we all get a chance for that question?
Yeah.
May I ask to go next, because I don't want to follow up Kwikstep.
Go for it.
Can you repeat that question?
So the question is, how did you start breaking? And then the follow-up is, why did you continue to break?
Okay. Well, I started from Lynn, Massachusetts, and Lynn, Massachusetts is actually, they got quite a rich breaking history. One of the, I guess, old school or elder crews was Lords of Illusions. So there was already a breaking presence in my city. And then honestly, I saw it for the first time in person. I didn't see it on like a music video or whatever. Honestly, there was just a lot of gangsters in my city. And all the gangsters knew how to do windmills. And if you was big time, you knew how to do nutcrackers and jackhammers. And me as a young kid, I was probably 10, 11. It's like, well, these are the cool people in the city, right? And they doing this dance, which is like, well, I didn't even know it was a dance at that time. But just me being young and where we're from, it's like those are the people that you looked up to. That's what you wanted to kind of become a part of. But at the same time, I grew up in a very strict household. My parents are refugees, so you know, a very strict, traditional Southeast Asian household. So when I seen breaking too, it was like, you're not supposed to be able to do that. You're not supposed to be able to spin around like that. You're not supposed to be able to hop around on one hand like that. You know, so it was like the ultimate way to just break all the rules. But at the same time, it was gangsters doing it. So it was like, well, you're also being told, well, don't go hang out with those kids. So it was just like the ultimate, can I curse? Sure. It was like the ultimate fuck you to the system. It was like the ultimate fuck you to all of that, right? Which we know breaking already is, but then at the same time, in my situation, being that young, strict household where we kind of grew up, like, all right, so it just captivated me right away. And I guess I just stuck with it because it was the only area of my life that I could have, like, I could drive my own lane with that. Like, you don't want to learn windmills? Cool, you don't have to learn it. You don't want to do this? Cool, you don't have to do it. Like, whatever it is you wanted to do, you could pick your own path with it. And it was the only place in my life where I had that type of control. For me to make decisions on my own. Everywhere outside of it was back to the strictness of everything. And it was also the only place in my life where that I feel like it brought me my own value to myself. Cause like we didn't have anything, right? Like I don't got money, I don't got nice clothes or any of that stuff, but yo, I made up this original freeze. You know, okay, cool, but dang, I finally learned how to do this. So it was things that money couldn't buy, and that was all I had really at that time. And another part of me is kind of just like, I don't know. It honestly never crossed my mind that I could stop.
Word.
New York right now, like the rest of the world, is on a lockdown. And when you're on lockdown, whether you're being punished, whether you're in prison, or whether you live in the ghetto, that's the point where the most creative art comes out of the people. Whether it's visual, musical, or physical. And right now in New York City, it's on lockdown, and you can see some of the most potent hip hop right now, underground. And when I mean hip hop, I mean hip hop. Hip, people in the know, and they're part of a movement, and they're part of a worldwide movement that needs freedom. It's the seeds of freedom. Hip hop is the seeds of freedom. So before hip hop was hip hop, that's what I was a part of. And the reason I'm making the correlation, because right now, like for instance, yesterday I was DJing at an event called Harlem Club Dance. And I saw people on stage, a neighborhood produced event from the age of 5 years old to 65, all dancing on stage. And it reminded me of the block parties that I grew up with when I was a kid. And that's what got me into breaking. Not necessarily the dance, but it allowed me to break through as an individual who needed to express himself. You see, I'm a foster child. I didn't have a voice. So the music had my back, and the dance was like my family and the people that I met before breaking. I saw people just express themselves in all kinds of ways. And the DJ was correlated with the people as a drummer correlates to the tribe. And when I saw this movement, I was like, yo, this is something that I'm a part of. It's inexplicable. When you grow up in New York City, people talk about B-boys having flavor. Every neighborhood in New York City has flavor. When they walk out of the apartment buildings, tenement buildings, or the projects, they walk out. Just like that, look both ways, not crossing the street, they're looking out for bullets. They're looking out what could be coming up the block. When it's clear, boom. The stride and the dip in confidence, as far as the dip going up, starts. Because that's all they have. You have to understand that before hip hop, you had the civil rights movement, which was being created. And in that time, the people who were part of leading the civil rights movement, I'm gonna just be straight up, were murdered. Right? People were deflated of pride and a movement. So when hip hop came along, it wasn't supposed to happen. When you hear, I am a somebody, those are MCs echoing what was happening in those marches. When it was just straight up, I am somebody. I am somebody. And that was the cadence, because they were treating people as if though they were nobodies. And hip hop came along to say, I am still somebody, right? And so knowledge of self is something that you gain when you're not at a party, but at a jam. Because it is jam-packed with people who need to express themselves through music, the physical dance, and art. And that's when I was exposed to hip hop before it was called hip hop. As it started to develop in the streets, your ears to the ground, you hear about people, you hear about floor rocking, you hear about rocking, you hear about DJs rocking in a different way than they do in Brooklyn. Now, as a foster kid, I was able to go to Brooklyn, Bronx, Manhattan, Staten Island, so I saw different versions of hip hop developing. So I was all around being curated as a young child in this thing before it's called hip hop, and I knew I was a part of something special. A young child has the ability to tap into his or her imagination and fuse with the energies around them, different from adults. That's why they call it a youth movement. But now as you get older, if you connect with your youth movement, it'll keep you young. And that's what happened when I got older, and it enabled me to keep going with the breaking. Because it's almost like it was a martial arts for me. Right? It kept me physical, it kept me strong, it kept me mentally sharp. I became creative with my own identity, and I gained confidence and self-esteem. And I'm like, if this can do this for me, I can imagine we could do for people around the world. And I make a long story short. I was depressed when breaking disappeared in '86. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was the last person breaking. There were people reminiscing about it, but people weren't living the culture. I walked around with a black book, tagged it up, did pieces. I walked around with a Puma suit, you know what I mean? A tail. In 1986, people were laughing at me, and I was like, y'all don't understand what's coming up the block. I could see it. But when you're a child or you're young, you can see much further than when people who already gave up that youth. They have blinders. B-boys and B-girls have the ear to the ground. They can feel the reverberation. They can feel what's coming, and I knew something was coming. So I meditated on it. I got a call from my manager, and she said, do you want to go to China? I'm like, for what? She was like, to break, to go on tour. How long? She said, 2 months. I'm like, what's the pay? She was like, you get paid in their money, and you got to spend it over there. So I came back with a whole bunch of clothes. But what I gained was the wealth in who I was to become. We went on tour, and we went to a stadium, and we performed, and there was a, what do they call it? I can't think right now. An encore of our performance. So everybody got to do a solo. So I went last, and of course I went out and did my windmill track, headspins. When I went into headspins, I heard the roar of the crowd that sounded like I was in the middle of an ocean wave. It was so loud. And then I heard things breaking apart. So I got up, and what they did is these people broke the barriers in China. It was communist when we went. And you know, they were trying to keep them back, and they broke the barriers and they were running towards us. I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble. Like, we did something wrong maybe? So I was like, all right, who's the first one that's gonna get it? And what I saw them do, they came with open arms, and they started hugging me, kissing me, lifting me up, and I'm like, man, if a little Puerto Rican from Brooklyn can make these people who never saw me before feel like this is what I wanna do for the rest of my life. So I was transported from Brooklyn to China in order for me to change my perspective of the world. So I grew up on a block, but I didn't realize that I was being blocked because that's all I knew. And when I went around the world, everything came full circle for me. And when I came back to New York City, I knew what my purpose was. And that's a similar story. I know Ben Bada has a controversial name right now, but if it wasn't for him going to Africa, Zulu Nation wouldn't be what it was, and what it still can be. So get off the block, unblock yourself, go around and be exposed to something else. Anybody you know who went to camp, Fresh Air Fund and things like that, those people are the most successful because they realize the world is much bigger than the world that you were put in. Travel around the world and understand what you are to be. So what I have to say about breaking, allow it to break you down so it can build you back up so you can break through into who you were meant to be. And I'll leave it at that.
Yo, give it up, give it up.
Whew. That's why I didn't want to follow him up.
Whew. All right. So, thank you all for, just answering this first question. We're gonna get into the second one. So, the second question is about crews. Obviously today we're doing a crew battle, and the one thing that we're aiming for with this one is not to really have super crews or just teams of individuals trying to win a competition, but I know that for me, I feel the crew means something different than that. And I'm just curious, what defines a crew to you? If you want to talk, how did you get involved with your crew? And lastly, why do you feel that crews are important to hip hop? And even maybe something you learned from the crew that could go beyond it too. This is open for interpretation. So what defines a crew to you? How did you get involved with your crew? And why a crew is important?
Well, what defines a crew to me is first family, first and foremost. I mean, the chemistry. The chemistry gotta run deep. Everybody, I wouldn't say have to share the same vision, but share some of the common goals, you know, that you all want to accomplish, whether it be from a move or to, you know, take out a crew or another people and helping each other, you know, doing it. I feel like I miss I personally miss the color coding stuff, you know, like sort of like the energy that was being fed off from gangs, and the 80s B-boys were coming up. I mean, some people would base it all off of, like, you know, the film B Street, and you got the tracksuits, and you got those with the bomber jackets and hoodies underneath. But I think what intrigued me about that movie, to say the least, was the, you know, the coordination. And I feel like that is really important. It goes back to chemistry, along with, you know, your name in the back, etc. But when the chemistry is strong, you guys can go far together, whether it be from show business to battles to just getting through life together, you know, because it's family. And it was always good to see, like, you know, strong crews out there. I mean, I remember when I was coming up in the early 2000s, you know, Mass was doing their thing. You know, there was some crews coming up. You had Problems, you had Ground Effects, you had us, who was Orphanage, you had the Floor Lords, obviously, etc. And these brothers would make themselves noticeable through, you know, coordination. Like, they'll, you know, whether they come in with the same kicks or just something, and they roll together, obviously. That was always key. One thing I gotta mention, I found this story pretty impressive back when I was living in Puerto Rico, about Stilo and Flow Rockers. I mean, aside of all the other crews in that island who inspired me, what I loved about the whole Flow Rockers legacy was the fact that they would huddle up and meet up first before any competition or battle anywhere. They'll always go way out of their way just to meet up with Stilo and Bayamon. And I always found that really dope, because of the fact that the jam could be right across the street from their crib, but they still would have to go 2 towns over just to meet up with the leader of the crew and the whole squad, so that they strategize what they're gonna do for the battle, whether it be a competition or just, you know, a party, a jam. I may have went like way out of the way on the question, but I think that's just what defines a crew to me. That's what makes that impression. That's what makes a strong impression. That's how everybody will take crews more seriously when when you meet up like that and you're organized, and, you know, and later in life, even if y'all may stop dancing, you guys at least just roll together, and may still share some common goals in the future. So, you know, there's so many definitions for the word crew, but to me, that's what it is to me. You know, family, chemistry, you know, and just having that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of what's going on around you, and try to keeping everybody updated. I was sort of like the encyclopedia guy in my crew. I was the guy who was always looking into the history and all that. I always caught that vibe from my crew that they weren't really trying to hear that whenever I talked about it, but I just had to put it out there. But, you know, as we grew up, I like to think that we all got over that, and we knew that it's important. It's important to know your past in order to, you know, work for the future. So I'll leave it as that.
Can you repeat the question again, Taylor?
So, what defines a crew to you? How did you get involved with your crew, and why do you feel crews are important?
I mean, a crew is just like a group of people to grow with, build with, for kind of whatever it is, I guess you personally kind of need in that chapter of your life, right? So for me, I was always the baby of the crew. I was like that middle schooler hanging out with the high school kids. And how I met my crew was that, well, first, I have two older brothers that break. My brother Tony, who's only like a year and a half older than me, but we was both the middle school kids.
Is that Tony D-Bags?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
And then my oldest brother Eddie, who is in high school. So when he went to the high school, he was like, yo, there's people that are breaking over here, and we were already destroying my mom's living room floor, breaking at home. But so we would sneak over from the middle school over to the high school, and then like somebody that used to be my neighbor was also breaking. So we already started recognizing people like, oh shoot, that's Juki. You know what I mean? Yo, you remember us? Like you used to live across the street from us. And then, you know, it was just like, oh, but my brother Eddie, his best friend Put, is also breaking. But Put's cousin Sna is also breaking. And then there's like Tona and Billy, rest in peace, that like, you know, they're all just best friends that also break, and that's how we all kind of came together. But the importance of that crew for me, By Chai Breakers, was that it's like, we all kind of just raised each other. Like, I feel like I'm a good sibling now. Like, I feel like I'm a good sibling to my brothers now. I'm a good son to my parents now, you know? But like, I didn't learn that from my own family. I learned that from By Chai Breakers, you know? Because like, I didn't really get to be around my parents, having that type of guidance from them. They're always busy out there trying to make ends meet. That's just what the situation was. But at the same time, growing up where we grew up in, I already said there was like there was a big gang problem in the early 2000s in Lynn. So even then, I remember when we first started practicing with them, like having protection was a real thing. And a lot of the people from our city joined gangs for that type of protection. And it was a real question in middle school of like, you know, yo, what gang are you gonna join? That was a real question. But then whenever they asked me, it was like, yo, I'm joining By Chai Breakers. Now that's BCB, so they're like, yo, what is it? Is that blue or is that red? It's like, yo, we don't even got colors, we just BCB, we By Chai Breakers. But I remember even walking home, and when we first kind of got down with them, and they like even kind of paraded us around a bit to let everybody else in the city know, like, yo, these two kids, being myself and my brother Tony, like, they with us, don't touch them. You know, and kind of be like, all right, so where you guys going? Where you guys going over here? Well, Jan's getting off at Mall Street, Yee's getting off over here, Puts over in the Highlands. All right, cool. So we're all gonna group together and take this route and make sure that all these different parts of the city see that we together, because they ain't messing with us, and we gonna let them know that they can't mess with you either. You know, but it's not like we was trying to cause trouble or nothing. We was just a breaking crew, but that's just how it was in the city that we grew up in. And then just knowing that, you know, I'm like 10, 11 years old, but I got these high school kids really looking out for me. Like looking out for my well-being, looking out for my safety. They're the ones that told me, yo, like, you kind of got something good with this. Like, don't go and do what we're doing. Because a good amount of them was also gangbanging too, which is how they kind of had the pull to be like, yo, don't touch this kid right here. You know, you touch this kid, we have problems. And what was the second part of that question, bro?
Why are crews important to hip hop culture?
Because a lot of times in hip hop culture, like just by the, I guess, more common family structures that do come about, like I said, it is your crew that is like your emotional anchor. It is your crew that does really kind of raise you and show you the ropes, right? But not show you the ropes in a way of like, I guess the traditional way that society might try to place on you. Like, a crew is gonna show you the ropes like that pertains to like what this real life shit is. You know what I mean? Like, your parents just might tell you like, oh, don't go into those neighborhoods, that's a bad neighborhood. But then it's my crew that's like, hey yo, if you go through these neighborhoods, this is how you have to move. We're not telling you not to go through it. If you can avoid it, but this is how you gotta move. This is how you have to carry yourself. You know what I mean? Like, this is how you have to move about. And then in turn, you gotta do your part and pass it forward as well. So that's what the crew is to me. And then in terms after that, like if you talk about changes in society, a lot of people say it starts with the family, it starts at home. But when we talk about hip hop, it starts with the crews. You know, the families to society is what crews is to hip hop, in my opinion.
What crew is to me is a manifesto. It's a personal manifesto. And when you're in a crew, you have different positions. Original crews came from the blueprint of gangs. And in the gang, you had president, vice pres, so on and so forth, down the line. You had a chain of command. And the young dudes were watching crews, and watching gangs, and they became crews. Now, what is the definition of a crew? Who can tell me?
Definition?
What is the definition of a crew? In the Navy.
It's like
A group of people put together to do a job.
Thank you. They're organized, right? So, what we're looking for in the hood is to be organized as a people. And a lot of times you don't get that at home. Your crew is your home away from home. It's how you become a B-boy. You find out your male energy, and then you become a man. Same for the women. You find who you're supposed to be. And in the crew, you might be the natural leader. You might be the prez. Then there's somebody who is the vice pres, and then you have your chain of command down the line. Original crews, when it went into battles, you didn't go out until your crew leader said to go out. Because he knew what was happening with all of these other crews. If this dude had a specialty, don't go, you go. And if you didn't go, and somebody else had to go because you were too afraid to go, you had the answer for that back at the crib, or at the practice spot. And usually, you had the slap box with your leader. And that slap boxing led you to get skills. Next time you battled, just like when you went home, you don't want to get slapped up. When your leader said go, you jumped out and you went, right? Because the embarrassment of possibly getting burned was better than what you had to face when you went back to practice, right? So my crew, fresh kids, from time to time, we would be at that, place practicing, and somebody would turn out the lights, click, and everybody had to go for self. Fighting in the dark, because a lot of times when we were out, we had to fight. B-boys not really fighters like that, unless they had to be. Now B-boys are usually strong. So what happens is the first time you fight as a breaker, you find out how strong you really are. And you're like, yo, I can do something with these hands. And then you have to make the decision, whether to be a boy or to be a man in particular situations. When to stay and when to walk away. Right? Same with battling. It's no coincidence that this thing is called a battle. It wasn't an exchange. Hey, let's exchange. Nah, man, this is where we gonna battle. Because we grew up in a war zone. And this is all we had. So your crew is your family. A lot of times you learn your manners from your crew. And your crew, the life expectancy of a crew is usually 5 years. After that, it's gone. If a crew lasts, it turns into an organization. When you get a crew, you're automatically all producers. You have to get outfits, you have to get a place to practice, you have to organize routines, you have to train your squad. So it becomes a place where you grow as a young person. And later on, when the dance becomes a platform where it used to be an outlet, it becomes a platform of you acting out your frustrations. You ever notice in the crew, after a while, your personal shit starts to get in the way? It's because you didn't address anything. All you addressed was getting together as a crew to dance. After a while, your crew starts to get together to live amongst one another and find out who you really are as a person. And you find out those things the hard way, like when you're in a crew and you get hurt and nobody's calling you no more because they can't use you for your skill, right? And the community is not associating with you in the same way. Then you start to understand, oh, we're just getting together, not even to battle right now. Crews can't exist right now. You know why? Because nobody's battling. Everyone's competing. Different. Crews didn't get together for money. They got together to express themselves, and they were getting ready to battle to defend their pride. Any crew, I would get together any crew to do that, because I'm a dysfunctional child. I have PTSD. You too? You failed class? You got left back? Yo, but we're all nice, right? Let's prove that at this battle, because I can't stand the motherfuckers up the block. That's real. That shit is real. When you compete, everybody's stretching. They know there's prize money. or somebody loses, they go home. Now, us in a battle, in a real battle, if I got fried, I want to see how nice this dude is against the dude that I brought with me who can fry you in case I got fried. So what's up? What's up now? So there's a lot of that missing because there isn't a need for that. But I think things are coming full circle because right now, like George Benton said, the whole world is a ghetto. Everybody's on lock. So if you ain't got people that have your back and you're dolo, you better be some Rambo type shit. Because if not, you're all alone out here. So either way, whether you're alone or you're with a crew, you have to man up. You have to woman up at some point to carry the reflection of where you came from. And that's what breaking is. I'll say it all the time. Breaking allows you to break through to who you're supposed to be. Because you're not going to break your whole life in the same way you were breaking when you first started. It's always going to change. Remember that. All right, I'll end it there.
Word.
Oh, real quick. Also that the crew shit, that's not just about breaking. Like, I'm still a by-child breaker to this day. There's only 2 members of by-child breakers that still break, and that's me and my brother Tony, out of the 10, 12 people, but we still a crew. They don't break anymore, they don't care to go to events, they don't care to go to practice, it don't matter. We still a crew. You know, when people say a crew is family, but then you got these crews that's like, yeah, we're more than a crew, we're your family. So why'd you kick that guy out? Oh, because he stopped competing. Like, that's straight bullshit. So when we talk about crews, we're not just talking about competing, we're not just talking about battling, we're not just talking about breaking. Like, maybe it starts there, but it transcends. Like, when you're really in a crew, that's lifelong.
You can't do it by yourself. Look, when a boxer boxes, male or female, they're in the center of that square circle by themselves. But what happens every time they go back to the corner? Who do they got? They got their crew. You need a team, even if you break a solo. Now, you know, we see one-on-ones, people go support that person. Because that need for crew is always going to be there. So crew, whether they're on dance floor or they're with you in a dance of life, the rhythm needs to be in correlation to who you are. And I'll repeat it again, it's manifesto. It's a manifestation of who you are and the law of attraction of who you have as a crew. Think about who you have around you as a crew. And if that's not what you want, change the landscape. It's all about manifesto.
Word. Yeah, give it up for this that round of questions, y'all. Word. I'm so glad we get to do this, y'all. This is amazing. It's really important. Thank you, guys. Okay, so here's the last question I have for you. This one is a little more open-ended too, but just what values or perspectives would you want to see more represented in the scene, in the culture, and what we're doing? And the follow-up to that is, what actions can we take, in your view, to keep those values alive?
I'm not texting, I'm writing notes, just so y'all know.
Honestly, I think what's missing right now is just gatherings in question of, like, you know, some good old-fashioned jams. I noticed like throughout the summer there's been some events here and there that are outside here in my city, and you know, they're spinning all genres of music and stuff, and I think that is a very beautiful thing. Unfortunately, we go through the 4 seasons, so you can't see that all year round. And I don't know, man. I mean, when it comes to this hip-hop thing, and in order to preserve it and keep it alive, we gotta get people just coming together. I mean, that was one of the most exciting feelings to me when I first was going to a jam, was hearing that music from a few blocks away. Yeah. And I just knew it was coming. So I'll almost start skipping there, and my boys are still just like walking, and I'm hyped, you know, and I gotta get there. I miss that feeling, man. And that was just an outside, you know, that's when it came to like park jams and things being outside. As far as inside jams go, you know, it just goes back to that party aspect, man. Play all genres of music. It doesn't have to always be breaks throughout the whole damn thing, you know. some good time stuff, you know. I remember back in Puerto Rico, when we were finishing up a jam, we had Regis playing some good old funk music, like just good old fashioned, you know, just get down music. We had a Soul Train line and the whole nine, and it was just like, it's okay to, like, let's peep the whackers, you know, let's peep the house heads, like, let them get their sexy on, you know what I'm saying? And it was just good to appreciate all genres of music, all styles of dance, all under one roof, and I just miss that part in hip hop. And I know it's still around, I mean, it could be dead in one part of the world, and then in the other side of the world, it's ridiculous, you know? I mean, imagine back then where it wasn't documented like it is now. That must have been a beautiful feeling for Quick to go overseas and seeing people still, like, you know, kind of just trying to preserve what they were exposed to say the least. That just that effort must have been a heartwarming feeling. And yeah, that's pretty much my opinion about that whole thing. I think in order to bring the hip hop back to its essence is just having these conscious parties, should we say, gatherings, especially right now. Times are just crazy, and we need some positivity up in this scene, because even some of our heroes turned out to be what we didn't think they would, you know. We were like, why would he do something like that? You know, some people were, you know, some names had their shade thrown on them, and then you have others who just speak the truth. And now you have to pick, you know, that you have to be conscious of even that. So, you know, these things need to keep going so that we just know what's around us and what may be even inside the actual jam. It's spiritual. It's all about energy. And if we have to call out that whackness eventually, then so be it. That's just the way the whole hip hop thing goes. Whether it be called out through the battlefield or, you know, the word got out or whatever. But it's just, let's get together, let's get conscious, and just keep the party rocking, keep the hop going.
Can you repeat that question again, Taylor?
Yep, so what values or perspectives do you want to see more represented in the culture? And then what actions can we take to keep those values alive?
I guess the values would be the cultural part of it all, the educational part of it all. Because I know for me, for sure, when my cousin was first coming over to the house and teaching my brothers and I, like, yo, check this out, like, oh, this is actually hip hop. Like, you know, when we were learning breaking, it was like, oh, like, yeah, but it's more than just this backspin. Like, there's actual culture behind this, and that's how it was being led when we were learning it. I feel like that's really lost. So kind of just touching back to the knowledge and the context of what it all is. Like, oh, this is a dance form created as like a middle finger to the system, you know, and this is why we're giving a middle finger to the system, you know, and putting those things into perspective so that it's not just, this is a movement, this is the physical movement that we're doing. And leading with that, again, it's kind of easy to get lost in it today, I guess, because everyone's so focused on social media algorithms and trying to go viral and content creation, right? But then it's like, maybe we got so caught up on content that we lost substance. So I kind of just really want to take it back to that. How can we do it going forward? Well, shit, the only way you could do that is to lead by example. And to be honest, I mean, I've kind of just been doing a lot of behind the scenes work here in the Massachusetts community for like 5-6 years, and I only started doing that because I didn't see any of my elders doing that. And that's not to knock anybody in the community, that's just kind of the situations that life put us in that doesn't allow people to really pour themselves into this community, you know, because real life does hit and a lot of people that were dancing that did pave the way, that did fan the flames for the torch, got real life things that they have to take care of for themselves, you know? But that's why you're supposed to share it with the youngins, because you gotta set up the youngins so that they could have a better situation than you. That's something I learned from my parents. They're refugees. So they went through a whole bunch of shit so I could be over here doing what I do, right, with a better life for me. So I just took that same energy and put it into this dance stuff instead. And shit, fuck it, I'll call out all the elders, you know? Like, if I'm the youngin' out here doing that, you know what I mean? Like, let's go, because it's the elders that taught me that. Like, you're supposed to pay it forward. Each one teach one, right? Share it forward, and these are the values and such, and those are all the things that I'm leading with. And maybe they can't do it in their particular time of their life right now. That's all right, but they still gotta at least teach it forward and plant that seed, even if they can't lead it through action, you know what I'm saying? And then maybe point it into the direction of the people that are leading through those actions, because it's not, I didn't come up with none of this stuff, I just learned it. I just learned it because it was passed down to me, and I'm gonna do my job to pass it down, and I'm gonna do my job to lead by it as well. Was there a second part to that question?
I think that's it. Yeah, like what did you want to see, and then what can we do to keep it alive? So
I want to see more people from the culture boss up. You know, it's like we talk about, let's talk about like the Olympics and all that. Oh my God, there's no infrastructure and all this and that, and this is why everything's a mess and this, but then it's like you're trying to build infrastructure on a national scale that actually doesn't really work. You actually have to start on the very local scale and then scale up instead of actually making this giant thing and trying to scale down. So I think the way they're kind of going about it is real backwards, and I think Massachusetts is in such a beautiful, beautiful like situation here, because we have a very particular ecosystem here where there are these college institutions that are like studying it. I mean, Massachusetts is really a crazy college hub, you know? Shit, this is by Worcester Hip Hop Congress and like the College of the Holy Cross, you know? Professor Megan Ross probably checked all of you in at the front desk. But then at the same time, like, not leaving it to just the colleges. I feel like a lot of the times we just left it to them, right? We're leaving it up to kids that count how long they've been dancing by semesters to keep the heartbeat of what we do alive. Like, nah. And the same way, the same approach with breaking, where it's like, dang, I just battled and I just got roasted. But why did I get roasted? Like, dang, like this person just pulled off some crazy ideas or combos or footwork techs on me, and I just couldn't match up with that. All right, cool, so what do? You go back to the lab, and that's what you work on, right? All right, cool, so we getting taken advantage of by all these businesses and corporations and institutions. They know these contracts, and they know the particular vocabulary, whatever, and they keep taking advantage of us. All right, I'm gonna keep that same energy. I'm gonna go back into the lab, I'm gonna learn this contract shit, I'm gonna learn this business shit, so that next time I'm up in there, you ain't getting me that same way. You know what I mean? These are all things that we learn breaking. These are all things we learn through battle. These are all things that we learn through the culture, but then we don't take it and apply it outside of the floor. And that's what I want to see more of in our communities.
I task the community at this point to uphold tradition and trajectory, both backwards and forwards. If you don't do that, the culture will be lost. You just mentioned the Olympics. We have the Olympics. It's called hip hop. The Olympics, people are really trying to shoot for the Olympics, but this is the same community that's trying to tear down somebody like Simone Biles. She's the best on the planet. 25 medals. She got skills nobody else has, and they're trying to dumb down the point on her skills. Because nobody else can do it. You want to talk about hating? So this is the place that we're shooting to go? Really? So they're shooting down Simone Biles, who's undisputed. What do you think they're going to do with us?
I see miracles at little small bands. Like, you never see that on TV. Like, I see Maximus at dance, like, doing incredible stuff. He's doing, breaking, salsa music, and I'm like, this is like amazing. So, like keeping it real, like Pistols was just saying, you know?
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is people are shooting for something that they can't handle. How many people just in this room can handle what it takes to be organized enough to talk to those people at the Olympics who've been doing it for 40 years, who have PhDs, which is different from the PhDs we have. We have PhDs. It's called power, heart, and determination. That's why we created a culture. What they're creating is a commodity. That's different, man. Where breaking is going is where basketball is right now. You have the NBA and one basketball and the Harlem Globetrotters. And the Harlem Globetrotters can smoke everybody. There's gonna be a crew like that can smoke everybody and keep the culture alive. That's trajectory, that's tradition, right? Each one has to reach one first before we can teach anybody. And the first person you have to reach is yourself. What is your goal? You gotta figure out what your goal is before you can tell anybody else what they should be doing. You do it first. Boss up, you. Be the boss of you and figure out which way you're going before you can lead anybody, right? And before you become a leader, the best leaders were the best followers. They just stood quiet and figured it out by watching somebody else who did it before them, right? And somebody else might do it better than you. I'll give you an example. When breaking was making a comeback, New York was in the middle of the crack era. I went to a jam in Hanover, Germany called the Clean Jam because everybody in Germany and all their OGs were dying from drug overdoses. Everybody who went to this jam didn't drink, smoke, or do any drugs. There were 5,000 people in there. I have footage of this, man. It was inspiring. And the circles that I saw were the same circles that I used to see at the Roxy's, except nobody was high. So I thought I was crazy, and people thought I was crazy because I never did drugs, never smoked. I'm not a womanizer, none of that. Breaking was my love affair, right? And when I went to Germany, I saw 5,000 people who were having the same love affair. I was like, oh shit. I'm gonna go back home and spread this love. Because the person you need to be in love with the most is yourself. Then you attract somebody who might love you for who you really are. So if you love what you do, a lot of people don't love what you do. But if you do that unconditionally, you find somebody who will love you unconditionally. Whether that's a friend, a mate for life, it doesn't matter. But each one, reaching one is really important, but you have to reach yourself. Reach inside yourself and figure out where you want to go. So that's what I mean by tradition and trajectory, right? And that's what hip hop was. It was a love for who we were as a people, and we made the world fall in love with us, and it spread around the world, and it changed the planet. When you watch panels are like rhymes, they're like MCs. It'll reach probably 5 people in that room and change their life. There's probably 2 or 3 people in this room, this panel will change their life, according to the words that you heard, according to the words that were manifested today. It doesn't have to be 500 people in here, it could be 5 people. And sometimes the best time to manifest words and have them hit your soul is after a jam, because your chakras are open, and if the jam is really dope, you're gonna sit even in the cold and talk for the next 2 hours. Some of the biggest events, what are the best part of the events? When people are talking in the hotel lobby for hours until 5 in the morning. That's where you start to build knowledge of self. It's really important, man. So knowledge and talking about what needs to be done as a people is another thing that needs to be done with hip hop. I like to see that. And very few people in this are gonna be ministers that can be able to talk to people and have them follow them. To be able to talk to people and lead by example. That's not an easy thing to do. But where does that start? With a crew. Your crew leader will be a minister later. This is a virtual ministry. You can go across the planet, and because you do what you do, you have a place to sleep and you have food to eat. That's straight up hip hop. Hip, because you're in the know, and hop is a movement of people who are aware of the way you move. Move yourself, and you will move the masses. And you will get them off their asses, for sure, for sure. You know what I'm saying? So that's just the last thing I'm gonna say, man, and thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. Love from me to y'all, for real.
Yo, give it up, give it up.
Feel the vibes, feel the vibes.
Yo, all right, y'all. So, I think we can wrap it up there, unless someone has a burning question